Hello my dear students, welcome to all of you on my YouTube channel Saurabh Goswami, History Optional for UPSC, and today we are going to discuss an important theme from History Optional subject, that is Portuguese arrival in India. So this is part B of the subtopic Portuguese arrival in India. Before this, in lecture number 3, I have already discussed part A of Portuguese arrival in India. So let me make it very clear that here we are going to do a detailed discussion of history optional syllabus in chapter wise, topic and subtopic wise format in small duration lectures, so that you could prepare it in a more holistic way, detailed way, and for that reason I have divided it in topic subtopic module. So this thumbnail will make the picture clear that in chapter 1, when I started European penetration in India, I discussed the chapter introduction. Then we did another discussion, that was the structural crisis in 15th and 16th century. Then the next subtopic was Portuguese arrival in India. So I have divided this subtopic Portuguese arrival in India in 4 parts. Chapter 3 we have already discussed, part A. Part B today we are going to discuss in lecture number 4, and in part C we will discuss this subtopic Portuguese arrival in India with historiographical perspective, and in part D what we will discuss all those PYQs that has been asked from this chapter in history optional program. So in this way, when you will finish any topic or any subtopic, you will have a complete preparation. So today's discussion is this part, that is part B of the same topic, Portuguese arrival in India. So what we are going to discuss today. So in last class, lecture number 3, I have discussed all the key aspects of Portuguese company, why they came to India, the nature of the Portuguese company, in what way Portuguese tried to establish themselves in India, what was the nature of their rule. All this we have discussed in our last class. We have also linked the same topic with the global developments. Now today we are going to discuss the very basic concepts about Portuguese presence in India. For example, Portuguese were present in India and they administered some of the territories of India. So the most important question is how they administered. What was their administrative policy? There were different aspects of their administrative policy, and one of the most important aspect here was their social, cultural and religious policy. So this also we are going to discuss in today's class. There was a long list of Portuguese viceroys in India, but some of them are important. They have some remarkable achievements. So we will also discuss some of the important Portuguese viceroys and their remarkable achievements in today's class. That is also very much important. And lastly, we will discuss that what was the impact of Portuguese presence in India. What was the impact of Portuguese presence in India? Here we will try to find some of the elements of cultural continuity that could still be witnessed in Indian culture. And finally, the most important topic, the reason for the decline of Portuguese power in India. So these are few dimensions which we are going to cover. Now, in the beginning, I told you that when we talk about the Portuguese viceroy representatives, previously I have discussed that the nature of Portuguese company was different from Dutch and East India Company. Portuguese company was not a joint venture company. It was basically Portuguese enterprise which was controlled by the crown. It was crown controlled, state sponsored, and there were too much interferences in the affairs of the company. So from 1505 onwards, there is a long list of Portuguese viceroys in India. When we use the word viceroy, it means we are talking about the representative of the crown. The first Portuguese viceroy you must have studied in your GS classroom programs was Francisco de Almeida. Then we see the next and the another most important viceroy, that was Alfonso de Albuquerque, and then we see a long list like LSD Albergaria, Digos Lopez de Sequeira, Duarte de Menezes. Vasco da Gama third visit to India. We all know that Vasco da Gama visited 3 times in India. He died in Cochin. Then Henrique de Menezes. So there is a long list. But after Francisco de Almeida and Alfonso de Albuquerque, the next and the most important viceroy was Nino de Cunha. Okay, so these 3 are the most important. They have some remarkable achievements. Okay, so we will discuss these 3 viceroys, their remarkable achievements, and then we will come to the topic administration of Portuguese in India. So let's discuss these 3 important Portuguese viceroys in India. So before discussing these 3, you must know that if we divide the Portuguese rule in India, so it can be divided into 3 phases. The first phase will be called early phase. The second phase will be called middle phase. The second phase will be called middle phase, and the third phase will be called later phases. So we can divide Portuguese presence in India in 3 phases: early, middle, and later phase. Right from 1505 to 1520, 1505 AD to 1520 AD, this part was early phase, where there are 2 most important Portuguese viceroys, Francisco de Almeida and Alfonso de Albuquerque in the early phase. Francisco de Almeida and Alfonso de Albuquerque. We all know Francisco de Almeida was from 1505 to 1509 AD. This is the time period, 1505 to 1509 AD, and Alfonso de Albuquerque time period was 1509 to 1515 AD. So these 2 most important viceroys belong to this period, that is known as early phase of Portuguese rule in India. The second is what? The second is called middle phase, and this middle phase is from 1520 to 1560 AD. This is the middle phase, and in this middle phase we see the second most important Portuguese viceroy, third most important Portuguese viceroy in India, and that was Nuno da Cunha. Nuno da Cunha, Nuno da Cunha, Nuno da Cunha, and the time period of Nuno da Cunha's presence as a viceroy in India was from 1529 to 1538 AD. So this was the time period. Okay, so this third important viceroy, okay, belongs to the middle phase, and the third phase is, or you can say the later phase was 1560 onwards. So these are 3 different phases, and here first phase there are 2 important viceroys, second phase 1 important name, and third phase is the later phase. In first phase, for example, when I was discussing the same topic in last class, I told you that Portuguese presence in India indicates elements of maritime imperialism. They were the maritime power. They focused on the naval supremacy, military superiority. So in this early phase, what we see, Portuguese focused mainly on naval consolidation. So in early phase, we see that Portuguese are focusing on naval consolidation. In the middle phase, what we see that Portuguese are focused on territorial expansion, but I had already made it clear that this territorial expansion was limited territorial expansion. It was not the same like the Britishers. Yes, there was territorial expansion, but it was limited in nature and it was focused mainly on the western coast strategic part, okay, because they wanted to dominate their maritime presence in India. So in second phase, what we see, limited territorial expansion, limited territorial expansion by Portuguese. If I am writing here limited, so why limited? Because here the Portuguese are focused to establish their territorial control mainly on the western coast, mainly on the western coast, or you can say that coastal areas they were trying to dominate their presence. Third phase or later phase 1560 onwards, we see that now Portuguese faced the two most important competitors. One was Dutch and the second was English. So here what will happen? The Portuguese will come in a defensive posture or in a defensive mode, because now they are facing two important rivals in the form of Dutch and English. So in later phase, what we see, the defensive posture of Portuguese, the defensive posture of Portuguese, because here they were facing two most important rivals. They were facing two most important rivals in the form of Dutch and English. So these are three important phases. So in early phase, I have written here two important names. The first was Francisco de Almeida, and this very first viceroy in India is famous for what? He is famous for, Francisco de Almeida. In general studies, you might have read this, that he was famous for his blue water policy. Blue water policy. I have already discussed with you blue water policy, dominating their supremacy, naval supremacy in Indian Ocean. And he was also the first viceroy. So right from the beginning, it shows the intention of the Portuguese that they tried to control or dominate the trade routes or the passages or the choke points. And he also fought an important battle that is known as Battle of Diu in 1509. Is also fought an important battle, and that is the Battle of Diu in 1509 AD. UPSC in its prelims examination used to ask questions from these battles. It means that if you are preparing for UPSC prelims 2026 or 27, then you must focus on the first on the port strategic centers, or you can say that settlements of Portuguese in India, their geographical locations, and second important thing, important battles that were fought. Question will be asked from these two areas. Now Alfonso de Albuquerque, yes, okay, here he was the most important ruler, okay. The second was, after Francisco de Almeida, the second name was Alfonso de Albuquerque. And what is the most important or remarkable fact about Alfonso de Albuquerque? So he is known for the famous conquest of Goa, 1510 AD. And after this, what we see, Goa will emerge as the administrative capital of the Portuguese. It was like a laboratory of the Portuguese where they experimented, okay. So the conquest of Goa is one of the most remarkable achievement of Alfonso de Albuquerque. Time was 1510 AD, and the capture of Malacca and capture of Hormuz, it was also done during his time. The capture of Malacca, capture of Malacca, capture of Malacca, capture of Strait of Hormuz, Malacca, Hormuz. I have already discussed about the importance of these choke points. I have used a word that is Malacca 1511 and capture of Hormuz 1515. I have already discussed an important word in last class, keyword, that was choke point. That is a small passage that is very important for trade and commerce. It is like a trade route. Today also in geopolitics, if you will watch the news, you will find that this uh, Strait of Hormuz is very much important. Many times you will find that US and the other countries do maritime military exercises in these straits, okay, and any kind of interference or military activity in the Strait of Hormuz will suddenly do what? Okay, this is like the disruption of the most important trade route, and it will result in the increase in the prices of oils. Okay, so these kind of things happen. So at that time also Malacca was having its importance, Hormuz was having its importance, Cape of Good Hope was having its importance. So it shows the intention of Portuguese that they are more focused on establishing their dominance and control in the sea. They were trying to control the sea routes, and in this way they were trying to maximize their profits. There is another important name, Nino di Cunha, and Nino di Cunha is famous for acquisition of Diu and Basin. So Nino di Cunha is famous for the acquisition of Diu and Basin. Diu and Basin. Today class will be more important for GS perspective. Last class was more important from optional point of view. In today's class you will get a lot of questions for your prelims exam also, for your GS mains also. So I did not like to skip anything. That's why I am teaching it. Otherwise I used to teach these things in general studies paper only. Okay, so now we are going to discuss these three important viceroys one by one. So let's discuss about the very first viceroy, that was Francisco de Almeida. Francisco de Almeida, 1505 to 1509 AD. And if you are watching my videos, even if you are watching one chapter, two chapter, whatever you are watching, just try to make the notes, and you will find that lastly you will see the difference and the impact of teaching. You will develop a good command on the subject. So Francisco de Almeida, I told you that he is known for his blue water policy. Blue water policy. You are familiar with this blue water policy? You are familiar with this Carthage system, naval pass system. Okay, so this policy was introduced by Francisco de Almeida. It means that now the intention was very clear. What is the intention? They want naval superiority. They are not much interested in territorial expansion in the initial phases. It means that in the initial phases, what we see that Portuguese are not interested in territorial expansion. Later, they were interested, but that interest is very much limited. They want to increase the naval supremacy. They want to control important choke points. They want to control important sea passages or sea routes for the trade and commerce. The basic purpose was to eliminate the trade rivals like the Arabs and Venetians from the profitable trade surplus that is generated from Asia. This is an important point. Okay, so here a new, you can say that, trend was seen, and that is what? Okay, the European powers who came to Asia, in order to make the space for their trade and commerce, they tried to eliminate their rivals. And if you will try to eliminate the rivals, it means those who are already dominating trade and commerce like the Arabs, okay, and all this, so obviously they will react, because this is going to hamper their trade and commerce, so they will react. The same reaction was seen from the Arab side, because naval supremacy, blue water policy, Carthage system, I have already discussed that Portuguese introduced a system where any naval ship who is using this trade route will have to take licenses from the Portuguese. Okay. You will have to submit or furnish details of the items of import and export which you are carrying. Which port you will use, you will have to give a prior information to the Portuguese. If you have not furnished the accurate details, in that case, the goods on the ships may be confiscated. This might be a possible that the ships will be attacked and drowned by the Portuguese. Okay. And if you are getting licenses, so you will have to pay fee. If you are furnishing or submitting details, it means that you are hampering your own business. So this was a direct attack on the privileges of trade and commerce that were previously enjoyed by the Arabians. So in this situation, on near Gujarat coast, near Diu, in the year 1509, a battle will take place, and that is very famous by the name of Battle of Diu 1509. So this is the background or the circumstances, and we see here a battle, and that is known as Battle of Diu. Year is 1509. The main issue is blue water policy, naval supremacy, and here there are two parties in this war. On one side there is Portuguese viceroy, that is Francisco de Almeida, and on the other side we see this group, or you can say that here the rival force. Here you will see a coalition of powers, and in this coalition one important, you can say, coalition partner were the Arabs. So we are fighting against Francisco de Almeida, and the ruler of Egypt, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, also supported this coalition. It means the Portuguese policy were also hampering the trade and commerce of ruler of Egypt, and the local ruler, that is the ruler of Gujarat Sultanate, okay, he will also fought Gujarat local Gujarat ruler. It means that the local ruler is also a part of near Gujarat. So we see that the local ruler is also the part of this coalition, and this coalition got indirect support of Ottomans also. Okay, I hope you are remembering Ottomans, 1453 fall of Constantinople. So here what we see, that this coalition got the indirect support of Ottomans. Now there is a very basic question, why this coalition supported each other against Portuguese, against Francisco de Almeida? The picture is very clear. Due to the Portuguese excessive interference in Indian Ocean trade, not only Indian Ocean trade, here the Ottomans are also indirectly supporting. The ruler of Egypt is also supporting. Arabs are supporting. It means that the Portuguese are having excessive interference in Indian Ocean trade, as well as the trade that is carried out using the Red Sea. So what we see, that reason is what? Reason is excessive interference of Portuguese in Indian Ocean trade and the trade which was carried on via Red Sea. So there was the excessive interference of Portuguese. This is one reason. Portuguese had carracks, small, well-armed oceanic vessels that were very quick. Okay, they could attack the opponents. So in this way, the opponents here, what will happen? But ultimately, the Portuguese had naval supremacy at this time. They are much powerful in naval warfare. They are much ahead than their rivals. So the rivals could not compete the Portuguese. And finally, what will happen? Okay, you will see the defeat of this coalition. It means in this battle of Diu, this coalition was defeated and Francisco de Almeida got the victory. And in this way, we see a collective resistance failed against the Portuguese, and this established the naval superiority of Portuguese for nearly 1 century. अब पूरा इन्हीं का दबदबा था, and it also marked the beginning of European dominance in the form of Portuguese dominance in Asian waters. This victory of Portuguese in the Battle of Diu also led the foundation of success of blue water policy, and now the Indian Ocean turned to be a maritime zone that was completely controlled by the European forces. It means that naval superiority, naval artillery plus gunpowder, naval supremacy, military supremacy, all this was powerfully projected at this time of Battle of Diu in 1509. So the Battle of Diu 1509 is very remarkable battle in the history because it established the supremacy of Portuguese naval power, because here they had defeated a coalition. And this victory in the Battle of Diu also established the European dominance in Asia. It strengthened the Portuguese control in Indian Ocean. Okay, and in this way we can say that this victory laid the foundation of Portuguese maritime power. This was their objective. So this victory did what? This victory laid the foundation of Portuguese maritime power. So this is very important. Now, it is important to understand the story so that we could develop ideas to connect the events. But this battle is also important for your UPSC prelims perspective. So this is a very important topic for prelims too. So while reading this topic, okay, you should mark it as important for prelims. This is important. Now, we are coming to the second most important viceroy. The second most important viceroy was Alfonso de Albuquerque, and the time period was 1509 AD to 1515 AD. And here we are talking about the first phase only, okay, where the Portuguese are focused on consolidation of naval forces. Now, what is the most important achievement here? So, one of the most important achievement is that Alfonso de Albuquerque conquered Goa. Year is 1510. This event is important from prelims point of view also. The important choke points like Malacca, like Strait of Hormuz were also controlled by, captured by Alfonso de Albuquerque. Here the year was 1511 and Hormuz year was 1515. This is very important. Okay, we are talking about the outside Indian Ocean. Okay, so this is very important. And Alfonso de Albuquerque is also known for promoting intermarriages. This I will discuss later. Society culture में हम बात करेंगे इसकी, ठीक है. And he strengthened the you can say fortification system. It means that yes, Alfonso de Albuquerque realized that naval dominance is important, and we will have you can say we will be focused on increasing our naval presence and dominance. But in order to strengthen that naval presence or dominance, we need what? We need a strategic territorial bases. We need strategic territorial bases. It means territories are also needed, but these territories should be strategic. These territorial control should be guided to increase their naval dominance or superiority. So he realized that if we will establish control over important strategic points on the western coast, it means that while establishing control over the territories, we have to focus on the western coast. So that will be, you can say, a kind of strategic territorial presence, and it will support the naval presence. And for that reason, the focus was Goa, conquest of Goa. So the story of conquest of Goa is also important from your prelims point of view. So you can write here conquest of Goa 1510. The question has already been asked in UPSC prelims exam. Okay, conquest of Goa 1510 AD. This story is very much important. Now, who is the viceroy? So the answer is Alfonso de Albuquerque is the viceroy. Alfonso de Albuquerque is the viceroy. So here the Portuguese viceroy was Alfonso de Albuquerque, and Goa was under the control of Bijapur Sultanate. It means Goa was under the control of Bijapur Sultanate, and at this time the Bijapur Sultanate was ruled by Yusuf Adil Shah. It means that now Goa is under the control of Bijapur Sultanate. Bijapur Sultanate is ruled by Yusuf Adil Shah, and Goa is important strategic territorial point for the Portuguese. Portuguese had already realized it, that Goa is a safe harbor on western coast. Goa is very close to spice trade routes, Malacca. Goa is a kind of gateway for the trade with Deccan. Okay, so Goa was a strategic point. By establishing control over Goa, okay, this territory, the Portuguese could easily establish their naval dominance or superiority also. Now here what will happen, a local Hindu ruler or chief, the name was Timosa, came forward to help Portuguese against Bijapur. So here Portuguese are supported by a local Hindu ruler, and the name of this local Hindu ruler was Timosa. So Timmaya or Timosa came forward to support Portuguese, and now the events started. Okay, there are three important events here. It means that you will find the three skirmishes, and after this the conquest of Goa was completed. The first capture of Goa was in the year 1510 in the month of March, where Albuquerque got help of Timosa. Portuguese attacked Goa. Bijapur forces were expelled from Goa and Portuguese occupied Goa. But what we see a second event, and that is the counter attack by the Bijapur Adil Shahi forces, and they did what? They recaptured Goa. Now again third attempt was made by Portuguese, and finally in November 1510 the Portuguese fleet established complete control over Goa. Bijapur forces were defeated and now Goa was permanently annexed. So this happened, and now Goa was made capital of Estado de India. And this time in 1510 we see that the first time Portuguese had a important strategic territorial foothold. Okay, now this journey, which started from naval dominance, is moving towards limited territorial annexation or control. And the same Goa later became the most important administrative center of Portuguese in India. The same Goa emerged as the most important commercial hub and the same Goa emerged as a missionary hub for the Portuguese in India. So this shows that Alfonso de Albuquerque was having a far-sighted vision, was having a very strategic vision, that naval supremacy could only be retained by establishing territorial control over key strategic post on the western coast. And this Goa is also the first important European territorial position in India, and in this way we see that Portuguese led the foundation of coastal empire. So here in 1510 what we see, 1498 Portuguese came to India, and in 1510, it means almost 12 years later, we see that conquest of Goa transformed Portuguese from a maritime power to a territorial state, where Goa became the political center for Portuguese rule in India. So this is the second important achievement. Now the third important viceroy was Nino de Cunha. That was the third important viceroy, Nino de Cunha. Now we are entering into second phase. Nino de Cunha was the third important viceroy. The time period was 1529 to 1538. 1529 to 1538. Here the Portuguese will be focused on limited territorial annexations. And here there are some important events. During the time of Nino de Cunha, Nino de Cunha acquired Diu in the year 1535, from Bahadur Shah, ruler of Gujarat. He acquired Diu from Bahadur Shah, the ruler of Gujarat. These facts are important for your prelims also. Nino de Cunha also acquired Basin or Vasai in 1534 from Gujarat Sultanate. So he also acquired Basin or Vasai in 1534 from Gujarat Sultanate. And all these are important territories. And during his time on western coast, the Portuguese hold or control was increased, and Goa became the official capital or formal capital of Portuguese in India. It means the second phase is what? Limited territorial presence. Okay, here the Portuguese are trying to establish limited territorial presence. Now, here there are two events. First is capture of Diu, and the second is capture of Basin or Vasai. So here you see what? The Portuguese came in conflict with the local rulers. It means that some events show that Portuguese also got the support of local rulers. For example, in the case of conquest of Goa, in some cases we see that Portuguese are fighting with the local rulers. In some cases they are in alliances, in some cases they are fighting, and in some cases you will find that the local rulers have got coalition members, alliances, support from outside India also. That is an important point. Okay, now what happened here? Okay, so the first and the most important point here is acquisition of Basin or Vasai, 1534. Let's discuss this first. Acquisition of Basin or Vasai. Acquisition of Basin or Vasai in the year 1534. Important for prelims, that's why I'm explaining. Okay, so write this, important for prelims. So Gujarat Sultanate was ruled by the ruler Bahadur Shah, and we know that this is the beginning, first half of 16th century. And during the first half of 16th century, if you look at the Mughal period history at this point of time, you will see that Babur, then Humayun. Okay, so this time what we see that the ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, was facing challenges from Mughal ruler, and on one side the ruler of Gujarat was also facing challenges from the Portuguese. This is the second important point. Portuguese are creating challenges in the seas or the oceans, and the Mughal ruler is creating challenges for this ruler of Gujarat, okay, because Mughal tried to establish their control, okay. So the Mughal expansion, territorial expansion, will create challenges for the ruler of Gujarat. Now the ruler of Gujarat was facing immense pressure. Now what will happen, okay, the ruler of Gujarat will try to get support and assistance of Portuguese against the Mughal ruler. So here what we see, that the ruler of Gujarat, who is the local ruler, he tried to get the support or assistance of Portuguese against whom? Against Mughal ruler. That is an important point. Sometimes Portuguese got the support of local rulers, sometimes they came in confrontation with the local rulers. So here Portuguese, he tried to get the support of Portuguese because he was knowing that the Portuguese are having naval superiority, the Portuguese are having excellent and well trained and capable armies, and if I will get the support of Portuguese, I can easily counter the challenge that is created from the Mughal rulers. And in this way, a treaty was signed between the ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, and Portuguese, and by this treaty, Basin or Basai was given to Portuguese. It means here, Portuguese here are doing what? Portuguese promised to help and support ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, and in return, Bahadur Shah will do what? In return, the ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, will give Basin or Vasai to Portuguese. Basin or Vasai to Portuguese. And in this way, what we see that Nino de Cunha got control over the Basin, and this event in history is known as acquisition of Basin. That is an important point. This event in history is known as acquisition of Basin by Portuguese, 1534. तो यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? Basin was acquired by Portuguese, and now this Basin emerged as an important fortified military base of the Portuguese. Now it was an important, you can say, a strategic location for the Portuguese on the conquered coast. So this is an important achievement of the Portuguese, and this also show that the local rulers are divided. The central authority and the local rulers, many a times we see that, okay, they are not helping and supporting each other. The foreigners came, Europeans came, here the powers are divided, they got the benefits, they established their stronghold or control over the territories. So this is an easy victory. This is a very easy acquisition. Ruler of Gujarat was fearful. He signed a treaty, and in this way, Portuguese got the Basin. Now, the second important point is acquisition of Diu in the year 1535. So, acquisition of Basin, I hope you have understood. Now, the second important point is acquisition of Diu in the year 1535. Again, it is important for prelims. तो कैसे हुआ? You must take care. So, when we talk about Diu, so Diu was an important or key center that was important to control the maritime trade that was, okay, conducted through Gujarat. So it was a very important. It means Diu was an important strategic point militarily also, and Diu was an important center for maritime trade and commerce that was being conducted from Gujarat. So Diu was a very important strategic point. And now what happened? Again, we see that there is a agreement between ruler of Gujarat and Portuguese. This agreement was again between the ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, and Portuguese. And by this agreement, the ruler of Gujarat will do what? okay, he will allow Portuguese for the construction of forts at Diu. It means the fortification of Diu, by this agreement, the fortification of Diu by the Portuguese was allowed. Now Portuguese could do the fortification. They did what? A strong fortification. And later they did what? Finally, they established control over Diu. Later in 1538, they established control over Diu. So in this way, the Portuguese consolidated their position or consolidated their dominance on the western coast. They got important strategic locations, strategic diplomatic military gains. Okay, so this point is very much important. Okay, Portuguese got advantages from the rivalry which was between the central authority Mughal ruler and the Gujarat ruler. Okay, so they were rivals, there were some problems, and Portuguese got the benefits. Portuguese got the benefits out of the regional political instability that was there. So they harnessed all those opportunities. So this second phase, or you can say that under the viceroyship of Nino de Cunha, important territories were annexed or they were acquired, and this phase marks the phase of territorial consolidation by Portuguese, territorial expansion, but the nature of this expansion was limited. So that is an important point. Now Portuguese, from naval supremacy, now we see that they are also controlling important trade routes, that is maritime trade routes from Gujarat. So this is an important achievement of the Portuguese. Okay, so these are the facts. But when we look at this journey, the journey is like this. Initially, the Portuguese were focused on maintaining their maritime dominance. Later, what we see, they focused on limited territorial acquisition. Later, what we see, they also focused on territorial consolidation. But the territories are very selected and limited. The territories are basically coastal territories. And in these coastal territories, for example, here, what we see that, okay, the Portuguese tried to do fortification of the Diu. It means that the fortifications are a part of their strategy. Okay, so this is the, you can say, the remarkable military achievements of the Portuguese in India. So the Portuguese rule in India is termed as Estado da India or State of India. Started in 1505 formally. 1498 Vasco da Gama came, but formally it started in 1505 when the first time Portuguese crown appointed its governor. So always remember that 1498 AD Vasco da Gama came to India, but the formal rule of Portuguese started in 1505 AD with the appointment of the first viceroy Francisco de Almeida. It started, and finally, gradually, what we see that the Portuguese came here in India with an objective of establishing dominance and control over the Indian Ocean trade. They were also having a missionary zeal, that is spread of Christianity. They also tried to establish control and dominance over important strategic naval bases. This all we have discussed. Now, when you look at the administrative structure and policy of Portuguese in India, let's discuss a few administrative structure and policies of Portuguese in India. Everything is not important here. The religious policy is very important, and that we will discuss in detail. Okay, so there was a central administration. We all know that Portuguese company was not a joint venture company. It was a crown controlled company. It was a Portuguese enterprise. In Portuguese enterprise, 1505 AD, when the viceroy was appointed, he was directly appointed by this Portuguese crown, and here the viceroy was not a bureaucrat like we see in the East India Company. So there was a central administration, and at the top of this administration we see in Portugal, there is the Portuguese crown who is at the top of administration. And here, viceroy already means what? Representative. So, in the central administration at the top, we see the one most important center of power was Portuguese crown, and the second was the viceroy or the representative who was appointed by the king of Portugal. The tenure or the time period of viceroy was generally 3 years. This time period, it means one viceroy will be present in India for 3 years, and here the viceroy will exercise civil powers, military powers, naval powers, civil powers, military powers, naval powers. It means you can say that he is one of the most important officer, not bureaucrat, but even one of the representative of Portuguese crown. And there was a council of, you can say, high officials who used to support, okay, this viceroy. At provincial level, at local level administration, at provincial level or local level administration, we see that in the second phases, when Portuguese has limited territorial control, for example, they established control over Goa, they established control over Diu, Daman, Cochin. So these are the centers: Goa, Diu, Daman, Cochin. So these centers will emerge as the provincial centers or the local centers of administration for the Portuguese. And here you will see fortifications will be done, and each fort will have a captain. Each fort will have a captain. So we see the territorial presence in some selected locations. On the western coasts, there were the bases, and we see that there was a captain, and this captain was directly responsible or answerable to the viceroy. So after viceroy, in provincial or local administration, we see that at important strategic centers, there was the captain. Okay, so this is the third important point. Now, what about the revenue system of administration of the Portuguese? The third and the most important thing, okay, revenue system of administration. So you must know that when we talk about the revenue system of administration of Portuguese, it was not like the British. Portuguese did not focused on collecting land revenues. Okay, Portuguese did not came with the land revenue policies. Okay, this is not their focus. This is not their priority. If this would have been their priority, they would have annexed more and more territory, but it was not like that. Portuguese main source of revenue was cartage system or licensing system in Indian Ocean and important choke points like Hormuz, okay, Malacca and Cape of Good Hope. So these are the important sea passages from where they are getting license fee, and that is an important source of revenue for the Portuguese, okay, because this entire trade routes were regulated, controlled and dominated by the Portuguese. But here is a problem. This kind of revenue base could never be permanent. For example, when Portuguese got tough competitors in the form of British and French, what will happen? Okay, they will deny to take licenses from the Portuguese. The British will also have an important naval force. French are powerful. So in this case, suddenly what will happen? The revenue will come down. So Portuguese failed to develop a permanent revenue base. They failed to come with the land revenue policy. They were not much focused on annexing more and more territories. Their main source of revenue was not land revenue like in the case of British, but they were more focused on collecting land revenue from the naval licensing system, that is in the form of cartage system. In the trade of spices, in the trade of horses, they also tried to establish their monopoly. And by establishing monopoly, they also generated some profits by establishing monopoly. Okay. But when this monopoly will be broken, what will happen? The profit from this monopolistic trade will come down. The same problem Portuguese will have to face. And Portuguese were also getting some tributes from the local rulers, because local rulers were knowing that Portuguese are powerful. they are having a well-trained army, they are having a naval fleet that is very powerful. So in order to get competitive edge over their rivals, the local powers always supported the Portuguese, that in case of any difficulty or challenge, Portuguese will support this local power, and in lieu of that, the local powers were offering tributes to the Portuguese. So these tributes were also the source of income or the revenue for the Portuguese, but this will not be permanent. French will come, British will come, they will also powerful. So many local powers will go to the French, will go to the British for help, assistance and support, and in this way the tribute will be diverted. So this is another challenge. Portuguese also developed judicial administration in some centers, for example Goa. Okay, so in Goa they developed the system of administration that was based on Portuguese civil and canons law. Okay, they have courts. In Goa, the system of inquisitions was introduced in the year 1560. That was the part of their Padroado system. Okay, and in this way we see that they tried to reflect their own judicial system and municipal system of administration in some of the centers like Goa. Military administration, naval supremacy was an important backbone. Some important centers were fortified. Okay, and by controlling important choke points they established to dominate their peasants. They were not focused on territorial annexation, but yes, they were focused on increasing their maritime and naval power. This is an important point. Now, out of all these administrative policies, one policy is very much important, and question is asked from this particular aspect, that is the religious policy of Portuguese in India. This aspect, this dimension is very much important, religious policy. So when we talk about the religious policy of Portuguese, okay, so a keyword is very important, a system is very much important, that is known as Padroado system. This Padroado system was popular in Portugal, and we see the reflection of Padroado system in Portuguese colonial presence. We see the reflection of this Padroado system in India also. Now, what is this Padroado system? Okay, so according to this system, first important thing is that here the political authority at this point of time, what we see, that the political authority and religious authority both are supporting and cooperating with each other. When we talk about the political authority, so who is the political authority? King of Portugal was the political authority. Who is the religious authority? So Roman Catholic Church is the religious authority. It means here you can write Pope, here you can write King. Political authority and religious authority, how they are supporting each other. So dekho, the church will give the authority to the King of Portugal. Here the church, the Pope will give the authority, the church will give the authority to the King of Portugal to promote Christianity, overseas, to promote Christianity in overseas empire. It means wherever there is expansion of Portuguese. Okay, so in all those territories, the King of Portugal was given the duty or responsibility to promote or spread Christianity, and for that, here the King of Portugal can give funds, can finance the construction of churches. The King of Portugal was given the right to appoint the church officials in these expanded territories. Okay, and they can do what? They can promote conversion. In this way, promoting conversion, forced marriages, and in this way Christianity will be promoted. they used to give incentives to the people to get converted to the Christian. And you will be surprised to know that destruction of temples was also done in Goa in the initial phases as a part of this program. Okay, it means that not only trade with use of force, the Portuguese were doing what? Trade. Yes, they were doing trade, but this trade was having use of force or coercion. But that is at the same time, this use of force or coercion was also done to promote Christianity in overseas empire. Okay, this is an important point. Okay, so this is a kind of royal patronage system, Padroado system. Okay, now inquisitions in Goa. In Goa, 1560, inquisitions were introduced. Whenever you are writing religious policy, you must mention these facts and information. Inquisitions were introduced in Goa in 1560. And what is this inquisition in Goa? 1560 onwards. Okay, inquisitions is not, you can say, a pure administrative thing. It is administration plus justice plus religion, सबका मिला जुला मॉडल है. It means in 1560 in Goa, a tribunal will be established, judicial tribunal will be established, and this tribunal was given the task to what? This tribunal was given this task to ensure the religious conformity or to prevent backsliding of those people who had got converted to Christianity. So there are two important things. One is what? Religious conformity to prevent backsliding of those people who has previously converted to Christianity. It simply means what? That under the influence of some incentives or anything, if you have already converted to Christian and now what you are doing? You have converted to Christian, but at the same time you are suspected of heresy. At the same time, it is suspected that you are a converted Christian, but you have not completely give up your religious practices and customs that you follow in Hindu religion. यानी क्रिश्चियन बन गए और चोरी छिपे क्या कर रहे हैं? हनुमान चालीसा पढ़ रहे हैं. तो ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. इट मीन्स दैट क्रिप्टो हिंदू, क्रिप्टो मुस्लिम, जिविस कन्वर्ट्स, ठीक है, क्रिप्टो हिंदू, क्रिप्टो मुस्लिम्स या converted Christians who are suspected of heresy will be, okay, you can say, put to trial in this judicial tribunal. And it was a very coercive act. You can say that it was a very forceful act. Okay, so this is an important point. ठीक है कि आप अगर क्रिश्चियन बन गए तो हर हाल में in each and every circumstances you will have to follow Christianity. You don't have to compromise. You don't have to follow anything that is related from your previous faith. Okay, so obviously here the use of force or coercion is done. Okay, and it was all done with the support of the state. Okay, and in Goa, in order to promote Christianity, many Hindu customs were banned also. In initial phases, many temples were broken also. So there was the pressure for conversion among the people, and they were getting many incentives or tax benefits if they are converted to Christianity. They could get easy promotions if they are converted to Christianity. So in this way, this happened. And at the same time, as a part of their social policy, the Portuguese also promoted forced marriages. It means marriages with the Indian women. And in this way, they tried to promote the Christianity. So this is a kind of religious intolerance. And this religious intolerance will make the local people very insecure. Okay, now they will start doubting the presence of Portuguese in India. Okay, they will start questioning the presence of people in the presence of Portuguese in India. Okay, the system of inquisitions will create a doubt or suspicion in the minds of Indian people against the Portuguese. So this religious intolerance proved to be very much harmful for the Portuguese presence in India. It resulted in increasing the social tensions, and it also have, you can say that, very negative impact on the trade and commerce of the Portuguese. In long run, you will see that the commercial gains of Portuguese will decline, and ultimately what will happen, the Dutch and English will emerge as the most powerful rivals or competitors, and Portuguese will not survive against their counterparts, European counterparts, or the rivals. So this is an important point. So I hope that you have understood this entire dimension. Now there is one more aspect that we need to understand, and that is what were the reasons for the decline of Portuguese power in India. So this is the next and the most important aspect, that what were the reasons for the decline of Portuguese power in India. This part is important for GS also and optional also. This is also an important question in your GS paper. So what was the reason? So first important reason is that, okay, the model which the Portuguese followed was a rigid monopoly model. This model was followed by the Portuguese, rigid monopoly model, and in long run this model could not be successful. In last class I have told you that if you want to be a successful businessman in long run, so you will have to let the other competitors survive. But here what is happening, Portuguese are trying to establish their absolute control or monopoly over the spices market. They want to keep the other competitors out. So there was no any free competition. If there will be no free competition, what will happen? Smuggling will arise. Okay, the people will start fighting wars with you. Okay, the people will try to, you can say, in long run, okay, they will try to harm, they will try to oppose your presence. So in this way, this rigid monopoly model in long run, it was not sustainable. The second important point is that Portuguese tried to emerge as an important maritime power, naval dominance, naval superiority, but they are doing all this without having a territorial depth. It means that without having a territorial depth, it means Portuguese were less focused on territorial annexation. They have limited territories, and that too on the western coast, some strategic ports. They did not focus on annexing more and more territories. They did not focus on making a permanent source of revenue in the form of land revenue. Okay, so they are mainly focusing on making their maritime power, naval presence, and their source of revenue is limited to the revenues that is generated from cartage system and monopolistic trade. And in long run, such kind of profits, okay, what will happen? The profits that is generated from these sources, that will be challenged. Okay, in long run there could be, you can say that, challenges from your rivals. This will result in trade shocks, and finally this will result in huge losses, trade fluctuations. So this will happen. The third and most important point here is that the institutionalization was very weak. Weak institutionalization. What does that mean? Weak institutionalization. It simply means that when we talk about the Portuguese company, it was not a joint venture company like the British or Dutch. It was a Portuguese enterprise that is largely dependent on the decisions of the Portuguese crown. And here the viceroy is also not a bureaucrat, but he is the representative of the Portuguese crown. It means this rule is more person-centric, or you can say that viceroy-centric. This rule is more person-centric or viceroy-centric. The tenure of the viceroy in India was 3 years. That is a very short tenure. The lack of continuity, okay, there was the lack of professional bureaucracy, and in this situation we can say that the institutionalization was very weak, and as a result of this, in long run, Portuguese company will not survive. The fourth and the most important challenge before the Portuguese was the rampant corruption in this Portuguese enterprise. The administrative inefficiency in this Portuguese enterprise. When you will compare Portuguese company and British East India Company, you will find that the British made a lot of efforts to control corruption, private trade. But here what we see, that corruption has emerged as a systemic problem in Portuguese enterprise. Okay, the private trade was very much popular among the Portuguese officials, and there was no one to control this private trade. Officials were engaged in private trade. Okay, so if private trade will increase, what will happen? The state's revenue will be compromised. Smuggling will become a regular or the normal task. So in this way, in long run, what will happen? This rampant corruption will make the Portuguese enterprise hollow from within. This is another important point. The next point is inefficient administration. It means that the powers of officials were not clearly mentioned. Many a times we see that different officials will have overlapping powers. There was a lack of coordination between Lisbon, the center, Portugal, and the administrative center, Goa. It means that the much coordinated efforts for the administration were lacking, and due to this, there will be delay in administrative decision making. And this will be an important reason for the decline of Portuguese. You will see that when British will come to India, they will find solution to all these problems. Now, the fifth important reason for the decline of Portuguese in India was limited manpower, limited resources, limited manpower and limited resources. How this limited manpower or limited resources was an important challenge? So the answer is Portugal was having demographic challenge, small size of population, limited population. Due to Black Death and plague in Europe, okay, we see that there was a high mortality rate due to these diseases, and there was a high stretched empire of Portuguese. It means that from Africa to East Asia, they were present at several locations, and in this way, if there is limited manpower, if you have limited resources, and if you are having a high stretched empire and your control is inefficient, administrative management is not excellent, in this situation, in long run, what will happen? Okay, the capacity to rule will be exposed. You can say that in long run, Portuguese enterprise will fail. And lastly, what we see that after Portuguese arrival of Dutch and English, now their rivals are, or European counterparts are, or rivals are Dutch and English, and they are, you can say that, better organized rivals. Dutch company and English East India Company both were the joint stock company. Okay, they were having better ships finance, okay, lower cost, flexible trade policies. Okay, these companies were, you can say that, very swift in decision making. There was less interference from the mother country or the parent nation. So in this way, we see that the Portuguese were only royal monopolists. There is a word. We see Portuguese as royal monopolists, and now their authority is being challenged by Dutch and English, and now the Dutch and English were capitalist corporations. Now you tell me, when royal monopolists will face challenge from capitalist corporations, who will survive in long run? So the answer is capitalist corporations will survive in long run. Royal monopolists have serious limitations or the challenges. And finally, there are some strategic defeats also. Okay. Now, the next important reason for the decline of Portuguese you have to write answer in 150 200 words. I think that you can easily write. Is the Portuguese also got challenge or resistance from Asian counterparts. Asian counterparts also got resistance from local rulers and Asian counterparts. They also got resistance from local rulers and Asian counterparts. Why? Because Asian trade was monopolized by Arabs. Now Portuguese wanted to establish their complete monopoly. So what will happen? Arab trade and commerce will be hampered. So what will happen? They will react. The Gujarat merchant class, the maritime trade, textile trade, horse trade, the people are doing trade and commerce. Now Portuguese are trying to dominate that trade and commerce also. What will happen? The local rulers will react. Due to their cartage system and blue water policy, what will happen? The merchants will have to shift the routes. The trade and commerce will become more costlier. Now they are facing new challenges due to Portuguese. So obviously they will resist. So this is the reason. It means we can say that Portuguese, for example, we can say that being flexible is a very good strategy. But here Portuguese are not very much flexible. They are relying more on power or force, not on flexibility. That's why they suffered. The Portuguese are relying more on rigid monopolistic attitude and behavior. That's why they suffered. The Portuguese lacked manpower, lacked capital. This is not a joint state company. This is not like a capitalist corporation. That's why they will suffer. Portuguese got challenge from the superior rivals. That's why they suffered. Portuguese ignored the local rulers and the Asian resistance, and that's why they were suffered in long run. So this is an important point. So I hope that you have understood why Portuguese power declined in India. And lastly, there is another important aspect, that what was the cultural impact of Portuguese on India. Okay, so we can see that the Portuguese influence could still be seen. Okay, for example, one aspect is languages, Konkani vocabulary. Portuguese remained an elite language. Linguistic impact here was not pan-Indian like British, but it was regional, because we know that Portuguese had limited territorial presence, so the linguistic impact will be very much regional. The most visible and lasting Portuguese imprint could be seen on architecture. When you look at the structures in Goa, churches, cathedrals, convents, okay, you will see the style, you will see the urban European aesthetics. It is the impact, visible impact, most visible and long enduring impact of the Portuguese. And on the law and institutions also we see the impact, but again it is very much regional. For example, Portuguese civil law introduced in Goa. Okay, some laws survived till 1961. So yes, there were some visible impacts, but the impact were regional. Now this is all we have discussed in the Portuguese chapter. All basic issues we have discussed or covered. Now what we need to do is that in last class I have discussed some themes. Right till now I have not integrated the concepts with the PYQs. Now what is our next task? Part A lecture is complete. Part B lecture is also complete, that we have discussed today. In next class, I will discuss the historiographical perspective of Portuguese arrival in India. And it means that this lecture is complete, this one is complete. Next lecture will be historiographical perspective. That will be the part C lecture. And then we will discuss the PYQs that has been asked in history optional paper. I will also cover here GS PYQs. Okay. And you will find that on the basis of class lectures, you will be able to write excellent answer of all the questions that have been asked in the previous years. I will discuss each and every question, and the content of our answer will be whatever I have discussed in my classroom. Okay, it means that it's not like that I am discussing something else and I will frame the answer from somewhere else. No, whatever I am discussing here, we will design our answer from this content only. So you will realize that if you are investing 1 hour time or 1.5 hours of time daily, you are learning the concepts Okay, you are also trying to make your running notes, because board work is very much essential. I never uh, support the PPT kind of teaching for UPSC students. It is good in case of CSAT, it is good in the case of this IIT NEET preparations, etc., but not for the civil service aspirants. It's not practical. Okay, so I think that you are getting the concepts, you are getting the ideas, you have explored all the dimensions, you will discuss all the historiographical perspective, you will also discuss all the PYQs, and then you will find that one chapter, once you have finished, okay, there is no need to read new sources and again for the same topic or subtopic. So this will be your complete preparation. So see you in the next class. Okay, in next class we will discuss the historical perspective. Thanks for watching the video.